Hey everyone, last week I purchased this M5 MacBook Pro, this 14-inch gorgeous space black fingerprint magnet of a laptop, and I bought the base model. And in this video I want to ask the question, is the base model M5 MacBook Pro enough? Now, I can't really answer that for all of you. That is an open-ended question, and it really does depend on you, your needs, your requirements, what applications you're going to be using on the laptop, etc. But I want to talk about it anyway, and I want to give you my perspective and why I'm happy with the base model. Now, the one that I bought here is the only M5 version of the MacBook Pro available just now. In a few months' time, we'll see the M5 MacBook Air, we'll see an M5 Pro and an M5 Max MacBook Pro. But right now, if you're buying a MacBook Pro and you want the M5, this is the model you're getting. Now, that's not a bad thing. Last year, we were all raving about the M4 chip, and it was amazing. But the M5 has improved CPU performance by like 15 to 20%, and the GPU has went up by like 30 to 45%, depending on what you're doing. Those benchmarks are crazy. They really are. But are you going to hit those benchmarks when you're limited by 16 gigabytes of memory? Probably not. Probably not. Right. To put things into perspective, we need to talk about money. It's all about the almighty dollar, or the almighty pound in my case. So here in the UK, the base model is 1600 or 1599, but let's say 1600. Yes, you can upgrade the nano texture display, and you can upgrade the base storage of 512 to 1, 2, or 4 terabytes. And those are some expensive solid state drive upgrades. Insane. But I think the real debate that people will have with themselves is 16 gigabytes of memory enough, or should they upgrade to 24 or 32? So if we keep 512 gigabytes of storage, then we can upgrade from 16 gigabytes to 24 for an extra 200. So you go from 16 to 24, it takes the price up to £1,800. You go up to 32, it takes you up to £2,000. And again, this assumes that you're sticking with 512 gigabytes of storage. And this is the Apple ladder, because at that point people think, well, I've got 32 gigabytes, I better upgrade the storage too. And now you're looking at more expensive options. Right, but that's the ladder, that's the price of it. Now, the thing is, I'm in a different situation, because I'll say right off the bat right now, if I was going to buy the M5 MacBook Pro and I was paying $1,600, I would have paid an extra £400 to get 32 gigabytes for my use case. And the reason being, at 16 gigabytes, this is enough for me to do a lot of what I want to do. Video calls, manage files, research, writing scripts for videos, browsing the web, maybe light coding, just kind of basic stuff, nothing too adventurous. If I went up to 32 gigabytes, I could then start doing video editing. Now, I do have DaVinci Resolve in this, and I'm going to test it. It should be enough for some, basic 4K videos, especially if I use proxies, reduce the playback resolution, and maybe rely on some of the swap files, use some of the SSD for that. But I don't want to push it hard doing that, because I know that I'm going to start hitting limitations quite quickly, because that 16 gigabytes of memory is shared between the CPU and GPU. So for me, I'll dabble with the video editing, but I'm not using this as a video editing machine. If I had upgraded up to 32, it's a different story. But I did not buy this for $1,600. I bought it for $1,300, which means that if I had to go up to 24, there's no discounts on that version, I'd have to pay an extra £500. If I wanted to go to 32, I'd have to pay an extra £700. And that debate is very different, because I'm not just paying £400 more, I'd be paying £700 more to get 32 gigabytes. And that's one of the main reasons I'm happy with 16 gigabytes of memory, because I got such a bargain on the base model. I'm happy to live with its limitations. The fact that it doesn't have 32 gigabytes it's okay, because I'll just not use applications that will require that amount of memory. But again, it really does depend on you and your situation. If I had bought a higher spec model with 32 gigabytes, I would be using it for more things. I would have been pushing it more. I'm happy using this sort of like a premium MacBook Air. That's a good way to look at it. I'm using it as a lightweight machine, and I'm happy with the 16 gigabytes model, and I've got all the benefits of the Pro version, the display, the speakers, all that type of thing, SD card reader, etc. The problem is, though, I do think that when it comes down to memory, and again, this is the Apple ladder, if you're talking about 32 gigabytes of memory and you're spending 2,000, and then you upgrade the storage but to 1 or 2 terabytes, then Apple know what you do. You then start looking at the more expensive MacBook Pros. You start looking at the Pro or the Pro Max versions, and all of a sudden you're now in a different price ladder. And now you're like, well, I need to upgrade 24 to 32, and now you're in this whole other debate. And now, instead of paying the $1,300 that I paid, or even $1,600, now you're looking at Apple laptops that cost $2,500 to $3,000, etc. And this is the thing I spoke about earlier in the year, where I spoke about the base model always giving you the best bang for your buck. Because once you get on that Apple ladder and you start paying crazy prices for storage and memory, obviously put an asterisk on memory just now because the market is crazy even for Windows users. But once you go on that ladder and you start paying more and more and more, you move away from the attraction of the laptop in the first place, an attractive entry price. And all of a sudden, you're paying so much more to get what you need or what you think you need. I've got a good idea as to what I need, and I think that's half the battle. You kind of need to know how much memory you're using or how much storage you're using. I've got a Mac Studio with 36 gigabytes of memory, and I can monitor that, and I can see how much I'm using, how much storage I'm using. Storage, I find, is obviously, it's an easier problem to tackle because you've got, I should have planned ahead for this, but you've got all these kind of SSD enclosures that you can utilize for that. And I have so many of these lying around. I've got 2 or 3 lying over there. But memory is something you cannot upgrade. And because memory and GPU share the memory, there's always that attraction to upgrade. So I may not have answered the question for everyone, but ultimately I opted for the base model because I got a bargain. I got an absolute bargain on the base model, and it's zero risk for me because in a few months' time, if they do release a new model and I do pick a version that has, more memory in it, pay for the upgrade, then I'll still get a lot of money for this. So it's kind of zero risk because I saved so much money. But generally speaking, I think what I'm trying to say is the base model MacBook Pro is enough for lots of people. It really is, but it does depend on what you're doing. It depends on the applications you're going to use, and you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that if you've got plans to use particular applications, then you might be restricted if you don't upgrade the memory. I'll give you an example. When I was using the MacBook Air a few years ago, it only had 8 gigabytes of memory, and that was okay in many situations. But I opened up Android Studio, which needs 8 gigabytes, use emulation, that needs another 8 gigabytes, and all of a sudden the whole system just shuts down. And there are certain applications like that are just use a lot of memory. They need a lot of GPU memory, or regular memory, or unified memory in this case. And there's not much you can do about that. If an application needs memory to run effectively, you're going to have to pony up the cash. So is the base model M5 MacBook Pro enough? For my use case, for how I'm using this MacBook Pro, it should be. It should be. It really should be enough for me and how I'm going to be using this. But if I do get, the idea of starting to do more with this, if I find that this becomes my daily laptop for doing everything and I want to start doing more with it, then I will be restricted by 16 gigabytes. But generally speaking, I think I'm going to be okay. But I will have to revisit this in the future and, debate whether I need to sell it and get a different model. That's it, guys. That's all I have to say about this. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And as always, I'd love to hear your opinion on it. The memory debate is something it always comes up when you're buying a new laptop. I think if you're in the Windows world, it's not something you have to sweat about. In fact, with many laptops, I'd rather buy it with no memory modules and just buy the memory modules myself. That's normally how I would think, but right now the memory situation is absolutely insane, so everything's been flipped on its head. But with MacBooks, you have to plan ahead. You don't have that option of just sticking an extra memory module in your laptop down the line. You have to know what you think you're going to be using it for. You have to also think, am I keeping this laptop a year? Am I going to keep it 5 years? If you're going to keep it a long time, there is a very good argument for upgrading the RAM. There really is a good argument for just upgrading the memory if you're going to be doing it, long term. But over to you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on memory and if you think 16 gigabytes is enough for a base model MacBook Pro or base model MacBook Air. Please do leave a comment below. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscribe, and until next time, take care.